From Unpacked, this is Jewish History Nerds, the podcast where we nerd out on awesome stories in Jewish history. I'm Yael Steiner.
And I'm Jonathan Schwab.
And we're here for Season 4. Schwab, it has been a while, and I'm really glad that we're back. And I have the distinct honor of being taught by you today for our first episode of Season 4.
Yes.
I'm assuming it's going to be awesome, but why don't you give me a little bit of a heads up?
It is going to be awesome, but I think in the end, it adds so much to how we think about Jewish identity. And before we even get to the story, in case you didn't already know, we're doing things slightly different this season. We're, of course, still taking turns. One of us is doing the research and teaching each other, but instead of focusing on a specific historical event or a specific person like we have in the past, this season we're talking about symbols and objects.
Things. I love things.
Yeah.
Things are awesome.
And I thought a great place to start is what I think of as the symbol when we think about Judaism and Jewish identity. If you Google Jewish and then click on images, I know because I just did this, it is the thing that is going to come up in 17 of the first 20 pictures.
I'm going to, make reference to this little necklace that I'm wearing right now and go out on a limb and say it's what I refer to as the Jewish star.
Yes. Yeah. And I think two things already from what you said. One, the idea of the fact that you're wearing a necklace with this symbol, and which is very, very, very ubiquitous today. But also that slight hesitation. And then you said what I refer to as the Jewish star.
So just to clarify, we're talking about the six-pointed...
The six-pointed star. And we'll start. Can I teach you something that I am pretty confident you do not know?
Sure. Always.
There is a fancy English word for this symbol.
It's not a hexagon. It's a...
Ooh, you're so close.
Cathedral?
It's the hexagram.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. Because the pentagram, that
exactly like the pentagram, right? That's a symbol.
Star for the Wiccans or the
hexagram. And I was like, oh man, this is the first thing I'm so excited to cover that it has. Of course it does. A fancy English name that nobody who wears a necklace with this symbol on it would ever use.
So it's the hexagram. It's a six-pointed star. I refer to it as a Jewish star. I know that in Hebrew, it's often called a Magen David. Magen actually doesn't mean star. Magen means shield.
Yep.
Often in English, sometimes it's called a Star of David.
So we'll refer to it, I don't know, by whatever we're feeling like, but we're talking about the same thing. And I think its name, as we'll see, kind of plays into this story.
Okay, well, tell me about this object that I proudly wear on my neck every day without knowing much about it.
Like we said, it's the symbol for Judaism. If you Google search Jewish images, people wear it on jewelry, but it's obviously inseparable from the symbolism of Israel because it's the prominent symbol on the center of the flag of Israel. It's the literal center.
Can I just say one tiny emotional thing? I started a new job recently and I was in the office last week.
Congrats.
Thank you so much. And I had a coworker visit my desk to install some software. And I didn't say anything to him about it, but I did notice that inconspicuously under his shirt, he was wearing a Star of David necklace. And, it certainly obviously identified him to me as a Jewish person. And as someone who also wears a Star of David necklace, immediately endeared him to me. So it's definitely something that immediately resonates with me when I see it, probably more often than I notice. So I'm excited to learn about this.
Can I ask, did you pre-October 7th, did you wear a Star of David necklace?
I did. Not actually for that long before October 7th. This particular Jewish star necklace that I'm wearing, I received it as a bat mitzvah gift. A little over 10 years ago, it was stolen from my parents' house in a break-in.
Wow.
And I was really upset about it.
So soon after your bar mitzvah.
So just like a day
10 years ago, yeah.
Just a day later. And I was really upset about it. About 2 or 3 years ago, a cousin who I'm very close to, after hearing me complain a little bit about the loss of this necklace, bought me a new one, the exact same one that had been stolen. which was extremely kind, a really, really lovely thing of her to do. And I have been wearing it again since then. Probably would have started after October 7th if I hadn't had this particular story. A lot of my friends have started wearing Jewish stars since October 7th, have started wearing other Jewish identifying jewelry. I think there's been a lot of conspicuous Jewish pride, at least where we live, where it is thankfully fairly safe to be openly Jewish.
Yeah, but it's also something that I think I pay much closer attention to than before.
Oh, certainly.
Like in your story, like, of course you notice when somebody is wearing a necklace with a Jewish star on it.
Yes, because unfortunately, it now feels as though being demonstrably Jewish means that you are demonstrably Zionist or demonstrably pro-Israel, which is obviously not always the case. So I think it's become a lot more politically charged than it once was. Whereas if I saw someone on the street 5 years ago wearing a Jewish star, I probably would have noticed, but I wouldn't have thought, what does that mean about this person's position on Israel and anti-Semitism and the safety of Jews in the world? Whereas since October 7th, it's become a very clear indicator of that.
Yeah. Well, one thing that I'll say as we're diving into this story is definitely the Jewish star being tied to politics, to anti-Semitism, to oppression, to pain, to identity is not something that started in 2023. There is a long history of a lot of associations with this symbol and it being a point of pride and a point of shame, like a way for people to target Jews and a way for Jews to demonstrate and be proud of their own identities.
So despite the fact that I've dragged us down this path, I'm assuming there is a lot more to this symbol than jewelry.
Yeah. So let's start with the most interesting part of the story of the Star of David or the Jewish star, which I think I wasn't so shocked by this because I think I sort of already knew this. But like, it doesn't really have a natural meaning or symbolism to it, which is to say, like, it's a geometric symbol that is not in its origin really naturally tied to any sort of Jews or Jewish history. It has come to be adopted. That gives it a tremendous amount of meaning. But there isn't anything like really deeply in what the symbol is that connects it to Jewish history and its origin.
I certainly don't recall ever seeing a reference to it in anything that I've learned from biblical history or even from Talmudic history. So where does it start?
So we talked about at the beginning, you said immediately, like the Hebrew name for it is Magen David. And Magen doesn't even mean star. It means shield, and David is the biblical King David. So like the shield of David, what does that have to do with the Jewish star? There's this popular mythology story that this was a symbol that was literally on the shield of David, that like David's army, the Jewish army went to war with this symbol. There's like zero historical, archaeological, textual basis for any of that. There is a history that there is some sort of symbol that like this notion of a Magen David, that there was some sort of like mystical, perhaps like symbol that David used or that his son Shlomo or King Solomon like also used perhaps to control demons. That's a whole side story.
Okay.
But for most of Jewish history, it seems like a lot of the interpretations of what those symbols were involved very long, complicated names of God, much more popularly the menorah, which like definitely is the opposite of just like a truly Jewish religious symbol that is rooted in a biblical origin, that like for thousands of years, Jews have clearly been expressing something through the use of the menorah, using the menorah as a symbol for something. So like the star just does not have all of that history to it.
So where do we first see it?
Yeah, so it's very, very old. And we see it in lots of places. And we don't see it exclusively used by Jews. It's a very pleasing geometric symbol. There's a YouTuber whose videos I like to watch, and he, sometimes talks about, I think it's called vexillology, the study of flags. And he has a whole thing of like truly great flags can be recreated. I think his test is by like a 8-year-old doodling in class. And he's very mixed on the American flag, but the Israeli flag and more simply the Star of David, is very easy for even young children to draw.
Yeah, I mean, from a graphic design perspective, it's one of those things where if you saw a graphic designer come up with it today, you'd be like, wow, this is perfect.
It's great.
This is Frank Lloyd Wright, from a design perspective.
It's a very pleasing geometric figure because it's very simple to make with 2 triangles, but there's a whole bunch of elements to it where that creates 6 smaller triangles. There's the center part, there's the individual thing, it points in different directions. So it's very easy to come up with tons of meaning that we can then ascribe to it. But the most basic theory of its origin is that it's just a very pleasing geometric symbol.
Okay.
That was in pretty widespread usage. Again, there's plenty of really old Jewish artifacts from the 6th, 7th century BCE that have this symbol, but not exclusively, meaning alongside other symbols. And there are plenty of non-Jewish artifacts that also make use of this symbol, going back.
So it's just kind of a decorative flourish that looks nice, like the same way you might see a fleur-de-lis or an asterisk or something that's, one of the top symbols in Microsoft Word. That's just something that people put on stationery because it looks nice underneath their name.
Yeah, I very much so. There's this ancient synagogue, I think it's pronounced Capernaum, that has survived in pretty good shape. So we see a lot of the decorative materials in it. And we see this Star of David a bunch of times, but not exclusively. There's a whole bunch of other, exactly what you're describing. There's also a motif of grapes and grapevines as a decorative element. There's also a pentagram, a 5-pointed star, which was also, commonly used alongside it. And another geometrically pleasing symbol that you certainly would not see on any synagogues today, but also has a long history of just as a geometric decorative symbol.
The swastika.
A swastika, which was not invented in the 20th century and was used in a lot of different traditions as just a pleasing, easy to draw shape.
Right. So we know now historically the swastika has been imbued with a particularly heavy meaning since the 1920s, 1930s. Prior to then, it was used in a whole host of areas having nothing to do with Jews or anti-Semitism. So it seems like this hexagram was similarly used. So when is its 1920s, 1930s moment? When does it switch over?
As far as we can tell, the sort of origin of it being sort of exclusively associated with Jewish identity starts in 1354 in Prague.
Okay.
Emperor Charles IV of the Holy Roman Empire, he allows the Jewish community in Prague to have their own flag, which was an important marker of identity. In the order, they have their own flag as a special token of his grace, which I read and was just immediately wow, how gracious of you, Charles IV, allow the Jews to make a flag?
Yeah, I'm assuming they weren't living under the best conditions.
Right. Well, I guess this is the start of some improvement, if they're allowed to make their own flag, then that's a symbol, but also a symbol
could lead to mixed dancing.
It certainly could. Well, and it could also do the opposite, right? It could be okay, this is a symbol so that we can be sure that we keep the Jews separate in some way, but also recognize them as having something worthy of some sort of representation. And it does seem like they chose it for themselves, which also is important, that the Jews are choosing this symbol for themselves. This isn't being imposed on them. This isn't saying, Jews now have to use this symbol, which does happen later in history, as we'll come to. And the Jews make this flag. It's funny because now I think in my mind, it's so strongly associated with certain colors, obviously from the Israeli flag, or with gold, because that's the most common, material you'd see.
Or yellow.
Or yellow. Yeah, we will get there.
We'll get there, yeah.
So this was a red flag with a star of yellow lines, we're pretty sure, not filled in. A red flag with a yellow Star of David is not something that you see nowadays.
Right. So it was just a decorative choice at that
It was
time.
decorative, but then because that was the flag of the Jews, it began to, it seems, really take on this importance. There was possibly another, again, that was in the 1350s. There is another flag for Jews in the Kingdom of Hungary in 1476, and that flag had 2 pentagrams on it, but it does seem like after the 1350s, you start to see this more and more, and it takes on a clearer identity as this isn't just, in the opening page of this book, this is just like this printer's symbol, but like this means Jewish in some way. And a later version of a flag, the 1627 version of this flag, has the 6 Hebrew letters of Magen David arranged around the 6 triangles. Gershom Shalom, who's like the scholar on Jewish mysticism, he writes that like at some point in those years, this 6-pointed star begins to converge with a lot of Kabbalistic ideas, or this idea of like this a symbol or a seal or a shield of David. These 2 ideas begin to connect in some way. Gershom Shalom is pretty clear, like that the historical record shows there was a notion that David had some sort of symbol. This symbol became popular, and that connection was made.
Those 2 ideas merged.
Yeah, those 2 ideas merged. There's a great quote. I was like, oh, Gershom Shalom, pretty clear and pretty harsh. He lists a bunch of different interpretations, sort of just like what the star means, or some of these like older Kabbalistic ideas of just like what it represents. And he says, what is common to all of these interpretations is that their daring is matched by their ineptness.
Okay. So really out of nowhere, which is probably not something that we'd expect, given that looking at other world religions, particularly Christianity,
right,
their symbol is the cross. And it's very much taught from day one that the cross is not just a graphic design. The cross is inherent in the founding of Christianity.
Like it means something really
exactly.
Clearly. Yeah.
It's a historical relic with actual, with actual substance behind it in terms of the foundations of Christianity. Whereas it seems here we had a few opportunities to select symbols for ourselves, and those ideas got a little bit garbled, and we came out with this 6-sided star that some people were referring to as a Magen David, and now that's just what we have.
Yeah. And even further than what you just said, Gershom Shalom, again, says that he thinks a lot of the symbolic appeal of it, or even just having a symbol, was an attempt to, and I want to say this carefully, imitate Christianity, in the sense that there's this very easy to reproduce, very ubiquitous symbol that shows this is Christian. Like, is there something that we can have that we can hang up on a sign for a store, or have displayed on the entrance to a synagogue, or connote the entrance to a Jewish quarter that says this is Jewish, that doesn't require writing this is Jewish, because Christians very much had that, and Jews were looking for something like that.
It's interesting. The film that we saw last week about Edgardo Mortara, for those of you who are either new listeners or haven't caught up on our Edgardo Mortara episode in a while, he was a young Italian Jewish boy who was stolen from his family by the papal police and ultimately raised in the Vatican by the Pope because he had allegedly been surreptitiously baptized. It's a great episode. You should go back and listen to it.
Yeah,
but basically, in the film that we saw, before he leaves his family, his father gives him a small silver mezuzah. A mezuzah actually makes sense historically as a Jewish symbol. It is overtaken by the gold crucifix necklace that is given to him by the nuns as soon as he gets to the Vatican, which really, almost more than the baptism, brands him a Christian. Like, wearing this cross is what brands you a Christian. Similarly, today, wearing a Star of David or displaying a Star of David is, as you said, something that connotes Jewishness. Yeah. But especially in the modern day, you know, where we're all individuals and we all can take symbols and make them our own and, you know, imbue them with whatever power we want to give them. I'm sure that there are people to whom displaying the Star of David is the most important part of their Judaism or of their relationship to peoplehood.
Yeah. I had totally forgotten this happened. So I was just looking at pictures from when I visited Rome 14 years ago for
your
my bar mitzvah, let's say.
Exactly.
On my honeymoon. And my wife and I were at the Colosseum, and I think it's because I was wearing a kippah or something, but someone saw me and knew that I was Jewish. It was this guy who was, dressed up as one of the gladiators in the Colosseum. So like this very muscular Roman man with a like shaved bald head in full gladiator outfit, just saw that I was Jewish. And then in his limited English, I think, started to tell us that he was Jewish.
Wow.
And then to show us that he was Jewish, he rolled up his sleeve and he had a tattoo of a Star of David on his very large bicep. And I took a picture of it and was like, this is such a cool picture and such an interesting story.
It's
and
really
such an interesting place to choose to put that tattoo.
There are so many layers there. And we can get into them another time. But I too find it very fascinating when people have the Star of David tattooed onto their body.
And he was a gladiator.
Talk about branding yourself as a Jew and not, and I think he seems to be doing it in a positive way, in a proud way.
Yeah. And he was really proud to show this to me. And I thought that was really cool to see. But yeah, I think connects to a lot of what we're talking about, of this idea of in the 21st century, it's the symbol for Jewish identity.
Absolutely.
So I don't know, getting from where we were in the 1600s to the 20th century, after it is used on this flag for Prague, we start to see it a lot more. Definitely a big element of its spread in the 1600s is that it's very clearly a symbol in the Sabbatean movement, to reference another old episode of ours.
You're really doing a great job at selling prior seasons. I'm gonna have to take lessons.
I think that was like our second episode ever. Right?
Yeah, second or third, absolutely.
But that doesn't seem to have hurt its importance as a symbol that was associated with the false messianic movement of Shabtai Tzvi. It also we start to see it prominently displayed on synagogues in a way that it's clear it's not a motif, it's not just like a design element, but it's like very huge part of the entrance. And one of those, it's on the seal of the Jewish community of Vienna in 1655, and it's on the synagogue in a Czech city called Budweis. Which is like from the early 1600s.
Like Budweiser?
Exactly like. So yeah, I was like, whoa, this is obviously the Synagogue of Budweis and its prominent Star of David. That's the number one most famous thing about the city of Budweis.
We're going to have to look into this later.
Yeah, is the connection to Budweiser, which I believe that is there is a long history of beer brewing in the city, and that's where the name comes from.
Very, very cool.
And then in 1897, at the First Basel Conference, it's chosen as the Zionist symbol. It's chosen for the Zionist flag, which is to say, like, before there even was an Israeli flag, because there was not a state of Israel, but it's chosen as the Zionist symbol by Zionists. And part of the reason that it's chosen, in addition to, like we were saying, just excellent graphic design and ease of representation, is that it's not specifically religious. Like something like the menorah or a shofar or a lulav and etrog, this could be appealing also to secular Jews, as like, this is something that clearly denotes Jewish identity, Jewishness, but does not carry with it, like a specific religious practice.
It's so fascinating because to me, that sounds like maybe one of the first indicators of a cultural Judaism. Mm-hmm. Versus a religiously grounded Judaism. Mm-hmm. And certainly now cultural Judaism has, it's a huge force certainly in American Jewry. So to say, as Zionists, people who want to return to the Jewish homeland, we're going to adopt a culturally Jewish symbol rather than a religiously Jewish symbol is very telling as to what the modern Zionists were trying to achieve.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
At the same time, I'm sure that part of it is saying there's a separation, between cultural, historical Judaism and religious Judaism. But I also think it's, an attempt to appeal to both at the same time.
It's a big tent.
I think it's more of a fringe, but I'm not an expert on this, so can't say. I think there are religious Jews, especially very right-wing religious Jews or ultra-Orthodox Jews, that would reject the Star of David as a symbol, certainly because it carries with it the state of Israel, which maybe in some of those communities they don't necessarily agree with or feel represents them, but also I think because this does not have the religious history to it, and therefore it should not stand as a Jewish symbol. Again, an extreme minority, but worth saying. I haven't done a survey, can't tell you percentages, but I do think that it is very widely adopted by Jews in most communities, just because, putting aside the questions of the origin, which I think we've been pretty the origin is not, it is not a good argument for its usage. But I don't know, carrying with it all the incidents, all the ways in which it's been used makes it so important. And that's the point I want to close on, but we can't close without talking about what I think, in addition to it being used as a Zionist flag and eventually being adopted as the Israeli flag, the other 20th century usage, which we've alluded to several times, of this 6-pointed star, and that's as a Jewish badge. So this didn't start in the Holocaust with the Nazis. There is a history of it being used prior to that, but I don't know, the world thought we had moved on from that. That was in the 17th and 18th century. Mm-hmm. It was, used for segregation, for oppression. But with the emancipation of the Jews in Europe, that had really faded and stopped. And then the Nazis brought it back. There's some really interesting, for those who are fascinated by such things, there's really interesting history sort of just the Nazi usage of this symbol and symbology, mm-hmm. and sort of the brief history of that, because I think they went through several iterations of it. But by 1941, it was pretty clearly set in what I think would be almost universally recognized, certainly by Jews, of the yellow star, which really, it's a yellow background and a very faint, I think black line, mm-hmm. and it's a badge, and with the word for Jew depending on the country, or the language spoken in different languages. And that was in late 1941 and by early 1942, sort of in every area under Nazi control, by law, required for Jews to wear this star. Which is
so interesting. Obviously, you said that the star had been adopted by the Zionist Congress in Basel in the late 1800s. Yeah. So it had already been taken. But mm-hmm. for a nascent nation state in 1948 of Israel to then take that symbol, make it its official flag, when it had been such a weighty symbol of oppression for so many of its citizens, is, I think, speaks to a lot of trauma and psychological confusion among Jews at that time, in terms of having been victims and having been murdered and lost everything, but then almost immediately gained everything that Jewish people had been looking for so many years. It's a weighty symbol. It speaks both to our salvation and our autonomy and Jewish power, and also very, very much to Jewish weakness and Jewish death and tragedy. So it's got all the pieces of an Oscar winner.
Yeah, everything you just said, that's that's a perfect summary, I think, of this story, which is this simple geometric symbol. It is a purely abstract geometric symbol, and yet it means so much.
It means everything. It means nothing.
It means what it means to be Jewish because of the history of it. And I think this is exactly what you're saying. In the creation of the modern state of Israel, in the way that we identify as Jews today, we did not choose to take on a new symbol. We chose this thing that has so much baggage.
Yes. And also, I think about it as a grandchild of Holocaust survivors. I am choosing to walk around in the world with this golden symbol mm-hmm. of Judaism, or what we've made into a symbol of Judaism, and literally carry myself publicly as a Jew. And, my grandparents parents and their relatives. My grandparents happened to have, been in Siberia and labor camps, and they were not in places where they would have worn a yellow star, but other relatives were, and certainly, our entire nation was, or much of our nation was.
I'm sure in our family trees, there are
there
plenty
were
of people.
There
right?
were plenty of people in my family, who were forced to wear such a badge and who would have given anything to have never been identified as a Jew again. Mm-hmm. And I sort of wake up every day, laissez-faire, get dressed, keep this necklace on, don't think about it, have the privilege to not think about it most of the time. I think since October 7th, that's something that me and my peers have grappled with. In New York, we are very, very lucky. And even in a place where we are so lucky, there have been incidents of hatred. It's weighty for something that, as you said, means nothing. It means a lot.
Yeah.
And I will say, as we kick off this new season, you have set the bar very high. We're talking about the symbol.
I think it does set the stage for what do Jewish symbols mean, And I don't know, means everything and means nothing is such a great way to summarize this one.
Yeah, speaking about, biblical weight, everything is nothing. When you think about it ecclesiastically, I think that might be the word.
Yeah.
Wow. So thank you for this. I think it's really been interesting. It's given me a lot to think about. When I see my necklace in the mirror, we'll have a lot of different thoughts than I did maybe this morning when I got dressed. And hopefully for our listeners, this has been a meaningful episode and maybe one that speaks certainly more materially to what goes on in their daily lives than some other things. Yeah. And I think that's our goal with this season with material objects and material history. Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks for this. I'm really looking forward to the next couple of weeks getting back into action.
I'm looking forward to our next episode and go to some interesting places this season.
I'll be surprised if you have the next one on a necklace, I will say. Jewish History Nerds is a production of Unpacked, an OpenDor Media brand. Subscribe wherever you're listening to this podcast and follow Unpacked on all the regular social media channels. Just search for @UnpackedMedia.
And if you're enjoying nerding out with us, please share this and other episodes with your friends and family. And most of all, be in touch with us by writing to us at nerds@unpacked.media. That's nerds@unpacked.media.
Jewish History Nerds is produced by Jenny Falcon and Rifki Stern. Dr. Henry Abramson is our education lead. It's edited by Rob Pera. I'm Yael Steiner.
And I'm Jonathan Schwab. Thanks for listening.